We're in part 3 of our introduction, and this will be about Netlify Dev. Netlify Dev is the newest kid on the block. In fact, most of it is still beta, but it's worth talking about because it's kind of the newest functionality. It's fully open source, and it helps you a lot in your local development. And so what I would encourage you to do is check out the site. So netlify.com/product/dev. It explains to you a little bit about what the vision is. And the whole idea is that it's a dev server that replicates as closely as possible the production Netlify environment on your local desktop. So there's no continuous deployment. Remember I talking about how working with the build bot, pushing it through, debugging it, um, you don't need that for development. For development, you want fast iterations. So how it works is that you install the CLI, which we've already done, and you run netlify dev command. There's some nuances to that where we'll talk about, but basically it spawns a full local environment. It detects your project. It makes environment variables available, performs edge logic, and compiles and runs cloud functions, and you can stream it live. So we'll cover all of this, and there's some nuances, but the main thing that you should watch is to check out the doc. And inside the docs, you'll find sort of formal write-up of this, as well as the keynote from announcing Netlify Dev. So the Netlify Dev docs, specifically, if you want to go into more detail, because this is as much as we've documented on the official docs. Netlify Dev docs, because they're still beta, you can find in the CLI repo and click on the Netlify Dev. Let's just start off with the typical demo that we've been working on. So this is the static site that we've been working with. We added parcel in the previous video, but now we're just going to treat it as just a pure static site with no ability to serve. So we're going to ignore the fact that we have to. So right now, what we want is to build the project locally. So I'm going to say yarn build. And that's going to build to dist folder. So this is all the production step that we have. One of the very nice things is that now I can just type netlify dev. And you can see that it has this very nice gem icon, which I'm very proud of. It has not detected a dev server, so it's just spinning up a simple static server on localhost 3999. And it also has a Netlify dev server on localhost 888. So that's two servers. And if you check it out over here, you'll see the production environment as we have done in previous videos. But also, if you look at localhost 3999, you see the exact same thing, right? So what's going on with that is that we have a static server that's being spun up. It's being proxied. So the local server, because there's no project detected, we just said we wanted to serve the project. So we served it up. The Netlify Dev is a proxy server that proxies from 3999, which is the port that auto-generated, and a proxy to 8888, which is the default port of change it if you want. Okay, so that's that. But let's say we wanted it to configure to actually use parcel so that you can get hot reloading. So parcel, let's have a look at what parcel does. I'm going to run yarn start. So parcel runs on localhost 1234. I'm going to kill that process. So the way that we configure that is in the Netlify dev block, because we need to tell Netlify dev where to listen to. So we can say port 1234. And you can look for this documentation inside of the here. And the command that we want to run for Netlify dev is to yarn start. So this exactly corresponds to parcel's port, as well as the command that we run. One thing I forgot to do is also list a publish folder. This is for the underscore redirect file. Publish equals to name it. So this is confusingly named, and I have an issue to rename it, but that's what it is for now. Okay, so now you see that we're actually running parcel. Previously, we were not running parcel. Previously, we were running a simple static server. Okay, and now you see that we're actually running parcel because we ran yarn start inside of netlify.toml, and parcel runs a server at localhost 1234. Again, this is exactly what you used to see with the old parcel process. This is in development mode, which is very nice. And you can see 8888 over here, and that looks exactly the same. So why bother to do all of this? Like, why bother to have two different servers? One's underlying server just for the project, and another proxy server just wrapping around that original server. And that's because we want to add in all this functionality and seamlessly provide it in one experience so that you're basically locally hosting Netlify and you're accessing one URL, but accessing all these features that you get in production in Netlify anyway. So one example of that is our redirects. So over here in the source folder, we have a redirects. So over here in the redirects file, we have a redirect from about us to about. And in my local environment from localhost 8888, I type /us, it actually redirects to about as well. So you can test your redirects locally. And that's a hugely useful thing for people, for example, in the advertising industry, where they really care about broken links. As of time of recording, there was a problem with catch-all redirects, like this one for 404, because this redirect also redirects even if you have an existing folder, which screws up a lot of the importing, for example, of CSS and image and JS files. So this is not fixed right now, but it is a high priority for Netlify. So I'm starting over with an empty folder, and I'm going to create a new React app. So now it's done installing. As you can see, this is a standard app. But typically where we would start is by typing yarn start. And that would give us a perfectly functional local dev experience with Create React App. But also, Netlify Dev works perfectly fine in this environment. And notice we haven't even set a netlify.toml. It just works. So I've already shown you how redirects work on Netlify Dev. And I'm just going to show you a quick demo of how environment variables are pulled down and you can use them even in local testing. So you're really testing like you're in production. Obviously, you shouldn't use this to do everything, but it's a nice ability to have so you don't have to duplicate your production environment variables. So let's do a quick deploy of this Create React App project. First, I'm going to run yarn build. Then we're going to link it up to Netlify. So I'll just run a Netlify init because I don't have an existing site. If I did have one, I'd do it with Netlify link. So I don't have this repository on GitHub, so I'm just going to do it manually. And it's just going to host it on my team. I don't care what the name is. And it just says Netlify deploy. Now I'm going to add netlify.toml. It's going to have a build key of publish directory build folder. I think that's all I need. Prod. And that will deploy the contents of my build, which is everything that has. Check it out. Yep, that deploys my Create React app. And let's check out my Netlify dashboard as well. Cool. So over here, I have access to my deploy settings, and I can set some environment variables. Let's set our favorite secret again. There's a nuance with front-end frameworks like React or Gatsby or Vue that you have to prefix your environment variables that you want to show up on the front end. So over here, I'm actually going to prefix it. Obviously, only do this if you're happy exposing it to the front end for whatever application you're building. And if not, keep it within a function, which I'll show you in a bit. So here, I want to be able to access process.env.react my secret. And so this would be testable in production, but I want to show you that I can also pull it down in Netlify Dev. So Netlify Dev, I have this locally alias to ND because I work with it so much. You can see over here that it starts injecting the build setting environment variable, my secret. which is very nice because that's exactly what we just configured on the production side. But here I'm in local dev and I have access to this. So now when I'm viewing my localhost project, I can see the results of my secret inside. So as far as possible, pulling down the production environment into your local desktop. Again, bypassing continuous deployment and just doing everything locally. Netlify Dev also comes with a live share functionality, but it's pretty buggy, so I'm just going to skip that right now because it doesn't work out of the box for Create React app. Now let's say we didn't want to expose our secret because it's meant to be secret. Our users should not be able to. So one of the ways to hide secrets, and this is handy for third-party API tokens, for example, is to use a serverless function. You may already know how to create a Netlify function, but in Netlify Dev, we actually bundle a nice functionality to make it even easier for you. So over here, I'm going to run netlify functions create. I have this personally alias to NFC because that's how I roll. Oh, and it's going to prompt me to specify a functions folder. That's very fair, so I should have a functions folder here, but obviously. So here it's got a prompt to ask me what kind of function I want. We can just have a simple hello world, but definitely feel free to explore available functions to give you some idea of what you can build. I do think that this is a very necessary part of creating a Jamstack because what application doesn't need some sort of compute or some sort of secret on the server side. So it scaffolded out a folder here for hello world, and this runs a basic hello world. And I'm going to change my environment variable to just my underscore secret so it does not get picked up by Create React app. And so because this is not exposed to the front end, I want to hide it, right? So I put it inside of a token hider, something like this, in the serverless function. So here I'll have process and my secret. All right, let's see how that looks. So I'm going to fire up Netlify Dev again. Again, I just have an alias for Netlify Dev. And you can see the dev server, localhost 8888. But also, you'll be able to see .netlify-functions hello world. That says, hello, I'm always angry. And that's part of the secret. So what that means is, from the client side, you can actually ping it. So I'm going to start pinging this thing. So, all right. Okay, so let's head back to our original. Let's fire up the tools just to see what's going on here. And you can see hello, I'm always angry on the front end, as well as if you go to the XHR, you can see the response from the local serverless function running. So that's what Netlify Dev gives you on the serverless function side. You can and should create more complicated functions. So here we have a very simple hello function just to show you the syntax. We've actually erred on the explicit side, even doing error handling for you. But these are just nice best practices. I'm going to create another one just to give you an idea. So let's say we want to write a slightly more complex function that uses dependencies. Again, I'm going to scaffold it out. You don't have to, obviously, but it's just a nice to have. So over here, we've now scaffolded out a node function, and that's pinging an API and returning a response. So let's also set that. Let's also ping that from our server. So instead of hello world, now we'll have node-fetch. So now we can run Netlify Dev again, and we can see a dad joke on our React app. And this is fetched by pinging a serverless function, and the serverless function then does the API response for us. So this bypasses any CORS issues, and then just sends it back. So you can do basically anything on Node.js within a serverless function. And so this is very good for reading, for example, a process.env secret over here, for hiding a token, for pinging an external API without exposing it on the front end. By the way, you can also live edit, and this will hot reload. So for example, I can change this API to the Chuck Norris Jokes API, and I can save this. And now we can actually see the new source on the front end. The last feature I'm going to cover is Netlify Functions Invoke. This is a feature for testing. You should have an existing Netlify Dev instance running already. Then I would open up another terminal and fire up Netlify Functions Invoke. So that goes through your functions folder and picks out the available functions. Just pick one to test. I'm going to just test the hello world function. You can actually simulate Netlify identity login. So if you wanted to put an authentication guard behind your functions, you can do that as well. Click no. And it's going to give you the response that you expect. And if you want to check the docs, there's also more documentation on how to send sample payloads, as well as set query strings, as well as bigger payloads as well. Event-triggered functions like form submission and identity signup have their own special behavior, and that can be very, very useful for testing. So the whole idea is you test your functions locally before you deploy them, so you do not have to deploy them in order to figure out whether your functions work. Now, an important detail is what happens to Netlify Dev functions when they're continuously deployed. So you can notice here that I have my node modules get ignored inside my project folder. And that basically means that it basically acts like node modules is not installed for this function. And because the dependency is not there, you can imagine where the problem lies. Here's an example of a failing build because node modules are not installed. I just wanted to give you an idea of the kind of error that you'll get if the node fetch module is not installed in the project. So basically, you have to cd into each function and install the dependencies, and that's how you deploy function folders in Netlify. Obviously, you can locate the node modules at the root of your folder, and it will just pick it up. But we like to encourage locally scoped node modules so you can control the versions and delete them. It just goes away neatly. So what the best practice that we encourage is to install this little utility called netlify-lambda. And fun historical fact, netlify-lambda was the precursor to netlify dev. And now that we have netlify-lambda installed, we can actually add a post-install script. And this is just a little script that goes through your functions folder and just installs the dependencies if there's a package JSON. You can see more detail on this on the docs for netlify-lambda. So let's go ahead and commit this. You can see here what it looks like for a successful build. So here we have installing of the regular dependencies from npm, and then we also running post-install scripts from the npm post-install, and we're running netlify-lambda install. Netlify-lambda goes through each of the function folders, sees that this dependency is required, and it installs it. So that's the rough idea, and it's just to work. And now we have a deployed site that is deployed and is also pinging a serverless function for us. Now, if you notice, all the code written here is in Node.js format, and sometimes you may want to use Webpack or Babel or Typescript, and that requires a little build tool. Netlify Dev does not assume any build tools, so you may need to bring your own. Netlify Lambda actually is a build tool, and that's its historical purpose. And you may want to figure out, you may want to read more about whether Netlify Dev or Netlify Lambda or both. We're just going to show you how to write your serverless functions in TypeScript and use Netlify Lambda in the process. The main concept that you want to know is that Netlify Lambda has a source and a dist folder. So right now, there's just the source and that's it. There's no compilation step, but you're gonna have to have a source and dist folder for this to work. So one way to do it is just go inside of functions, the source. You can put it anywhere, but that's just where I recommend to do it. And you can put hello world.ts here, and then you can follow the instructions for setting up your script. So we've already installed Netlify Lambda, And now we can install the rest of the TypeScript requirements. So yarn preset TypeScript, as well as TypeScript types node and AWS Lambda. And I'm also going to follow the docs and add Babel RC. Now I can actually use TypeScript types in my serverless function code. So for example, I have copied over here the handler type. We're going to use this const handler is of type handler, and I'm going to export in here. And we can even type the event in the context. So now we have all the event parameters down in here. So for example, dot query string parameters, and we know that this is a string. Or we can use context, whatever. Get remaining time in milliseconds. So all sorts of good stuff coming for free from the community types. So that's all well and good. But now how to build it. So we're going to go over here. We're going to run a post build script. Source function. So let's test our post build script. You can see that it outputs a nice little minified JS file. So we can get rid of this folder down here. So this will deploy nicely as a function, but you're writing it in TypeScript. So that's the rough idea of how to use Netlify Lambda. The final step is for me to show you how to get Netlify Lambda working with Netlify Dev. And fortunately, there's nothing to do. All you do is Netlify Dev, and it picks up your Netlify Lambda build script. So as the warning says, this is a beta feature. Please give us feedback. But that's what we call a function builder, that it has a source for the function, it builds, and then it builds to a directory, and then we serve from that directory. Okay, so that's a nice summary of everything that we have for Netlify Dev and Netlify Lambda. Definitely have more opportunities to add more items, especially with to do with developing with identity in Netlify CMS, but that's for another video. And I'm just going to cut it here for now. Let me know what feedback you have or what questions you have, and I'll answer them. Thank you.